Hey everybody, welcome to the Great Lakes Divide stream powered by FederalWilliams.com. I'm your host, Adam Biggers. You can follow me on Twitter at AdamBiggers81. You can follow Great Lakes Divide on Twitter and Facebook, same handle at GL Divide. And don't forget to visit FederalWilliams.com for all of your realty needs, FEDERAU Williams.com. Tell Mike Williams we sent you. Specializes in the Lansing area with a focus on the eastern suburbs, but he is your statewide go-to as well, so let him know if you're in the market. Trill City is in the room, so what's up, Spartans? Trill City, how's it going? I don't know how to reply to that. I'm not able to make it down to availability. Had some stuff, some work today. Wrote about Jim Harbaugh. Talked to him a little bit on the conference call. We'll get into that. Talk about, I don't want to go full-on preview mode for Nebraska, but this is actually a big game if you look at it, and I'm going to explain why. I think right now, actually, this is a really big game, not only for Michigan, but Nebraska. And again, we'll get into that a little bit later. I'll answer your questions. More on Karan Higdon. If you guys didn't watch yesterday, I can confirm that he suffered an ankle injury against Western Michigan. Harbaugh said that he's day-to-day. I'm not able to go down there tonight. I don't know if any other players will provide updates on Chris Evans' condition. I'm not sure. I think it's just like a stretch, a little minor bump. I'm not sure it's going to keep him out Saturday. But any questions you guys have, we'll get to those. I'm going to tweet out the live link really quick on our Facebook and our Twitter page. And again, that's at GL Divide. And I want to thank everybody who's subscribed to the YouTube channel so far. 1,200 plus guys, like 1,240, something like that. Again, up from 847 prior to camp. So a huge boost. Thanks to everybody who's watching and subscribing. And I'm almost done tweeting this. But yeah, Friday it'll be more of a preview. The regular viewers, you guys know on Friday, I'll take your score predictions and we'll get more into the preview aspect. But there a little bit I do want to talk about Nebraska today, along with answering your question. And one more, hold on, I just got to put it on the Facebook page and I'll get in there. Let the chat fill up for a little bit. I wish there was a button where it could just go to Twitter and Facebook all at the same time. All right, that looks good. We are set to go. I'm going to get in this live chat. Trill City says, what's up, Spartans? Hey, Trill City. Joel Brown said, what's up, Biggs? Hey, Joel. Trill City says he's chilling. Trill City says Nebraska's quarterback will dash Michigan. Which one, though? I mean, there's a possibility of two quarterbacks. I don't think they're last I knew, there's quarterback situations kind of up in the air with Adrian Martinez. And we'll get into that. I guess we can get into that off the rip if you guys like to. Andrew Bunch or Adrian Martinez. Adrian Martinez suffered a injury. Omaha World Herald reported that he suffered an injury against Colorado. So, and that brings us to me too, guys. I mean, I'm kind of itching to talk about this. So we're going to start off. Usually I'll go with what you guys want to talk about, but we're going to go with what I want to talk about because I plan on writing a column about this probably later in the week. And I'm really starting to think about how big of a game is this really for Michigan. And Benjamin's in here, so Nebraska lost to Troy at home. They're going to get slaughtered. Big Bubble Blue says this man's tripping. Trill City's Indiana's on the rise. I think Michigan State better be on watch against the Hoosiers, actually, Trill City. Cameron Clark says, hi, Adam. Hey, Cam. And Trill City says, Big Bubble Blue says, it's Nebraska's first road test. Trill City says, why is the big house so unintimidating? Is it because of all the elderly that's not loud enough? I think it's pretty loud. Anyway, guys, we're going to start with this topic right now. You're Nebraska, coming off a losing season. You have Scott Frost, who is, I know that there's a comparison to Scott Frost, Jim Harbaugh and stuff. I mean, that's easy. They're not the first guys to return to their schools. They're not going to be the last guys to do it. I mean, they're in the same conference. I get it. People want to write about it. There's a little bit to write about there, but just look at for what it is. Scott Frost is a guy had huge success at UCF. They're jokingly claiming at least a share of the national championship. Scott Frost goes back to Nebraska, where he's a legend, and people are expecting a lot of big things from him. Well, they had to cancel their first. Akron actually canceled it due to weather. And Nebraska's played Colorado, lost 33-28. And if you guys remember Nebraska, Colorado in the 90s, like in the Big Eight, even before the 90s, Nebraska, Colorado in the Big Eight was a premier national matchup that was must-see football. That was a huge game, regardless if the series has simmered down. And Nebraska's now in the Big Ten, Colorado now in the Pac-12. But they used to both be members of the Big Eight. So this used to be a huge game, right? And to lose 33-28, and then you lose at home 24-19 to Troy. Okay, if you're Scott Frost and you're Nebraska, you need a quality win. That Akron game would have been a way to maybe get tuned up a little bit, get fans excited, start the season out with a big win. 1-2 is a lot better than 0-2 going to Michigan, right? Even if they had a good game against Akron, did some things well offensively, defensively, but still lost to Colorado and then still somehow lost to Troy. And Troy's no joke either, but I mean, it's Nebraska at home. And now you're going to Michigan 0-2, big game for Nebraska. Now flip that over. Michigan, Nebraska, it doesn't have the history, but if you look at, I made this point on the conference call. Well, not really made the point, I brought it up. I mean, one of Harbaugh's biggest games ever was against Nebraska. And I'll talk about that a little bit as the 86 Fiesta Bowl. He had 2 rushing touchdowns. But I wrote about it earlier today. Harbaugh isn't rah-rah. He's not reminiscing. He's not talking about any of that. The 97 talk, what if they played? None of that. He's focused on the Big Ten opener. And how big of a game is this for Michigan? Hosting Nebraska, regardless of circumstances, it's still Nebraska. Scott Frost, there's some attention over there. It's the Big Ten home opener. You already lost at Notre Dame. There's already this talk about Michigan can't win big games and can't win road games. I think this game's huge for Michigan in the aspect of it's not only the Big Ten opener in Nebraska, but I mean, it's a must-win situation. I feel like, I mean, it has to be a must-win for Michigan right now. I mean, every team goes into every situation saying this is a must-win, but Michigan, despite doing some things well against SMU, despite doing some things well against Western Michigan, despite a decent second half against Notre Dame, I mean, you gotta look at Michigan's schedule, and maybe it's not as intimidating as it once looked because of the Big Ten. But after Nebraska, then you're at Northwestern. That's another road test, and then Maryland, and then Wisconsin, and then you're off to Michigan State. So I mean, this Nebraska game is important not only in terms of confidence and all that stuff, but boosting the Wolverines into conference play. So I tend to think this is a really big game. It might not be a big game nationally, other than Jim Harbaugh versus Scott Frost, the coaching alma mater angle and all that stuff. But in terms of impact for both teams, this is a really big game. So I'll go in the comments, see if you guys have any questions. I've been blabbing on here for a few minutes. Cameron Clark says Nebraska lost to Colorado and Troy will be fine. But I mean, in theory, you would think that, right, Cameron? But you got to believe that Nebraska's really hungry. A win at Michigan would maybe not erase the loss to Troy and Colorado, but it puts them in better position, right, than being 0-3. I got to believe that Nebraska's going to play a good game. Cameron Clark says Husker defense is pathetic. They are soft. Let's see show me some stats. I don't know. I don't have all the stat breakdown. Benjamin says 49-0 Michigan claps Nebraska easy. I don't know about that one, guys. I think it's going to be a closer game than that. Cameron Clark says Huskers will out-hit Michigan. Trill City says this is a big game for both teams. Michigan needs to check all the boxes in this game or they possibly underachieve. I agree with you, Trill City. Trill City says Troy looked fat. Yeah, Troy's no joke. Like, look at who didn't Troy beat LSU last year, right? I can look up, some of their big wins right now, but I mean, Troy's beaten some big programs. Trill City says I predict 80 rushing for Martinez, and that's the Nebraska quarterback Adrian Martinez. Assuming that he plays, right? Again, it might be sophomore Andrew Bunch. He started last week, and he's a walk-on. So either way, Michigan's going to be facing either a quarterback coming off an injury or a guy with a lot of not a lot of experience, limited. I was going to say a lot of limited experience, but that doesn't make sense. Limited experience. And again, guys, if you don't already, follow me on Twitter at AdamBiggers81. If you have a question during the time when we're not doing the live stream, I try to answer questions as often as I can when I have time. E-Mish wants to know, will Michigan go 3-and-out on the first drive for the 4th game in a row? I mean, I don't know, E-Mish, but that's a little discouraging for the offense, right? And then against SMU was a 0-0 tie. What, they went 3-and-out on the first 2 drives? Or wait, did they get us? I know they punted. I'd have to look up the drive chart. Or did they punt that second drive? Was it 2 3-and-outs or 3-and-out, and then they picked up 1 first down and then had either way. They didn't score on their first 2 drives, and that first quarter was pretty unimpressive against SMU. Trill City says, what network is this game on? It's BTN, I believe. Or Fox Sports 1, I'm sorry. Yep, Fox Sports 1, noon kickoff from Ann Arbor. Fox Sports 1. Benjamin says, Adam, are you going to the Michigan versus MSU game this year? Yes. Cameron Clark says it's Michigan. Every game is a must-win. Exactly, Cameron. But Cameron, you can agree that this game is pretty important if you look at just everything that I talked about leading up to this game. What if Michigan loses to Nebraska? Let's pose that question. I'll ask you guys that. What are your thoughts? What if Michigan loses to Nebraska? Because the opposite end of that spectrum is going to show how big this game is for Michigan, right? If a loss is a big thing for Michigan, then a win has to also be a big thing. So let's say this. What happens? How would you guys feel if Michigan lost to Nebraska? Big Bubble Blue says Northwestern's falling apart, though, and I'm not worried now until Wisconsin. Kirk Towers in here. He says, go blue. Thomas Bendit, good friend. Hold on. I thought I saw him in here. Yes, right there. Thomas Bendit. And hold on, this camera. I still couldn't find the autofocus. I'm working on it. Thomas Bennett says Nebraska has outgained its opponent so far this season, misleading to look at 0-2 record. And Thomas said, how big of a game is this for Nebraska and Michigan? Both sides, guys. Or if you, like I said, I'll ask you guys the question, what if Michigan loses in Nebraska? That's what I'm saying. This is a bigger game, I think, than people are giving it credit for. It's not just Michigan's Big Ten opener. It's not just a Big Ten opener for Nebraska. This is a game, I think, that really, especially the early half, the first half of the season, this can help determine the rest of the first half of the season. Every game counts, I know that. But if we're looking at it on a per game basis, week by week, how important is this? And again, Nebraska's lost to Colorado at home. That was at home. Nebraska's loss, I believe that was at home. Nebraska's lost to Troy. That was at home. Yeah, let me double check that against Colorado. Yes. That was at home. 33-28, 24-19. They got to go on the road and get a big win. If you're Nebraska, that's the goal right there, right? Easy to say. Doesn't take an analytical mind to get that, but as you guys know, sometimes the simplest things in sports actually are the most complicated to do. The simplest sounding things, go out there and win the game. Play well. That sounds really easy, right? Well, there's a lot of complicated strategy that goes into that. So Carnivorous Lunar Activity says Michigan's not losing to Nebraska. No way. Seeing every loss hurts from Cameron Clark. So yes, everybody can agree it's a big game. Cameron Clark says, is Ron Johnson still on the team? Haven't seen or heard his name brought. He's on the roster. I haven't heard anything about Ron Johnson. He and Reuben Jones were 2 guys. I'm like, what happened? They disappeared. But Reuben's played. He's in there at DE. It's like a 3rd stringer. Haven't heard anything about Ron Johnson. And again, guys, injury news, day-to-day still. Dwumfor, Can't confirm the surgery. Michigan hasn't confirmed that, but I know that it's out there. Tariq Black, no timetable to return. Karan Higdon and Chris Evans day to day. I can confirm that it was an ankle injury against Western Michigan for Karan. And who else is banged up? There's another one. Luigi Villon out for the year. Benjamin says worst teams in the Big Ten: Rutgers, Illinois, then Nebraska. I mean, Rutgers. Oh my! Don't even get me started on Rutgers. Carnivorous Lunar Activity says Willie Taggart might make it 2 years at Florida State, or will Taggart make it 2 years at Florida State? I don't know. Florida State's having a pretty rough year right now too. Ball Game 41 says, does nobody else see that Harbaugh is trying to ram the run blocking down the OL offensive line throat? Reason for vanilla offense, putting as much film as possible out for the OL to learn when needed. Offenses put up points. If I'm understanding that correctly, Bog, I agree with what you're saying. And I'll go back to my point yesterday. I mean, and after the SMU game, a lot of people were complaining about Chris Evans. Okay, he didn't have the big runs. Yeah, he's not designed to run up the middle like Karan Higdon. Chris Evans was the tempo setter. And at one time he had 14 carries or whatever for 15 carries for 50 yards. I said this yesterday. He ended up with 18 for 85 along with 35. He averaged 4.7 yards per carry. So, I mean, that's a good game on paper. He did his job. Michigan opened up the passing game. Chris was just a guy to, offset the tempo a little bit. I thought Chris Evans did his job well. He didn't have the big flashy runs or anything. I mean, he had the one, and it took him a little while to get going, but flip that around and look what Michigan was able to do. Shea Patterson. And I've mentioned this a million times. And now that, you guys pound this is a good stat. If you're talking, people want to talk about, something a little bit deeper than just Shea Patterson's completion percentage, which is at 70.8. He's 14 of 15 to DPJ, 4 touchdowns. He's 7-11 to Gentry. He completed 8 passes in a row. I mean, I'm watching every stat possible that I could track on Shea Patterson. I'm doing that. And I mean, there's other guys who have a higher completion percentage, but show me another connection, quarterback, wide receiver right now that's hotter than DPJ and Shea Patterson. That connection is on fire. And it's lethal. It's in the making. Lethal in the making. Greg Ryan says it doesn't matter how teams perform in other games. Teams will always, always, always give Michigan their best showing. Teams like to attack our brand. I agree, Greg. No matter who. I mean, SMU gave Michigan a pretty good shot, didn't it? I mean, you got to tip your cap to SMU. Kirk Towers says we also have to escape with a win and no injuries, which I hate to even talk about. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of stuff that's important, right? I mean, first game of the year in the Big Ten, so much on the line, deeper than just, what we see. Okay, what's the Big Ten opener? But what else is in there? And you got to, think about what they're probably talking about internally. And it's probably the same stuff that we're talking about right now. It's a game, yes, one game at a time, blah, blah, blah. But at the same time, this can determine the trajectory for the rest of the first half of the season. You got to look at it from Nebraska's standpoint. How bad do the Huskers want to come into Ann Arbor and beat Michigan? After an 0-2 start, you lose to Colorado, lose to Troy. You don't have the benefit of playing Akron, which is a game that you probably would have beat up on the Zips. Maybe. Assuming. So you don't have that stat stuffer game and the confidence game. All you have are 2 losses, 2 home losses, one to a former big-time rival. I mean, at one time, you could say Nebraska and Colorado at one time hated each other like Michigan, Ohio State. I mean, it was that big of a deal. Cameron Clark, Dwumfor got hurt. I can't confirm anything on Michael Dwumfor. Cam Clark says Villain's always hurt. Yeah, it's the second week. He had Tariq Black have bad luck. Trill City says if True Wilson was the bell cow, the running wouldn't be a problem. I like True as well. I like his running style. He's not afraid. Seems pretty durable. And against SMU? I'll even mention this. Against Western, people were bringing him up, like it was a feel-good story. I thought he was more than that. He was number 3 for a reason. He's not just a feel-good story. he had 6 carries for 54 yards, along with 17 against Western Michigan. That was a good primer against SMU. Pretty good as well. 11 carries for 53 yards and a touchdown with a long of 12, average 4.8 per carry. I mean, True Wilson's in there for a reason. Don't just look at True Wilson's, it's a cool walk-on story. You always like to see that happen. And guys, have been praising him left and right. Chris Evans, was tweeting about him, about the way that, True Wilson's work ethic. And of course, he's got a great work ethic. If he came on as a walk-on and now he's in a position to really boost his stock in the team. Michigan's going to go with whoever's the hot hand. I mean, Harbaugh has said that in the past. It doesn't matter who it is. Whoever has a hot hand is going to get the ball. True Wilson's warming up. Ball game, back to your point about the offense keeping it vanilla. They only say that because people act like Harbaugh doesn't have any. I know and ball game. I'm with you on that 100%. It's really funny I think it's fair to question coaching, and they don't mind it. But at the same time, I mean, it's the first 3 games. You got to believe that there's a method. And people will point, okay, well, why didn't they open up against Notre Dame? Well, I don't know. Maybe that was, that goes into your theory about giving the O-line plenty of film. Is it going to benefit them later in the year? Of course it will. I mean, that Notre Dame loss hurt in week 1, but if we're looking at, week 8, week 9, week 10, they might be looking at the Notre Dame game as like, wow, look what that taught us. I mean, that should be the scenario, right? Learn from the mistakes. Benjamin says Evans is a playmaker. He needs the ball and screen passes more often. Yeah, he's lethal in space. Chris was put into a role that he's not built for. He's not Karan Higdon. He's not going to run up the middle, break all kinds of tackles, and get all these yards after contact. That's not Chris Evans' game. Chan Chef says, it seems we haven't used much of our misdirection counter runs. Started to find a lot of success last year with them, and the few we've ran this year have been our best run plays. Yeah, and that one to Ambry. But expect to see that. I asked Grant Perry how much of the offense we've seen. He said it was very little. Nick Baumgartner, the Free Press, followed up. The video's on this YouTube page, to kind of try to quantify it a little bit. He asked if a sliver. Grant Perry said, yeah, sliver. Mike Onwenu said we've seen less than 50% of this offense. Yeah, and with Ambry as part of the offense, we're gonna see that. Ambry Thomas is the guy for that. That's Ambry. Trio City Grant Perry percentage. What do you mean? Rashawn Johnson says I'm changing my name to Peoples Jones. RPJ. You could just be RPJ and just go Rashawn Peoples Johnson. Or if you want to go Rashawn Peoples Jones, that's fine. You shall now be referred to as RPJ in this chat. Kurt Tower says Patterson had yet to reach his full potential work. I don't know what that means right there. Big Bubble Blue. I don't know what that, here's one. Bruce McGraw says, you see Michigan beating MSU given the fact that MSU has a weak secondary? I get asked this question a lot. I mean, until further notice, I would still lean to Michigan State because it's won 8 of the past 11. It's at home this year, so it is a road game. If you want to go with the road game narrative with Harbaugh, I'm not totally on that. The fact of the matter is, yes, that it hasn't, but I don't believe that it's not because he can't coach in those games or whatever. They've lost those games, and that's what they've happened to be. But I think people make a little bit bigger a deal out of it. 2 of those were right within his reach, and we'd be talking a whole different thing if they won at Iowa and that eventually, we're in the college football playoff in 2016. I mean, he had them right there. So I think that whole Harbaugh, overrated, whatever people are, whatever angle they want to use at the time, I think it's kind of easy. It's kind of lazy, actually. So if you really look at it for what it is, Michigan is a good team under Harbaugh. I saw a stat, one of only 21 teams since 2015 to win 70% of its games. I mean, if that's not, it's not 3-9 like Rich Rod. It's not that type of thing anymore. It's not a horrible team to watch. Michigan football is improving, and I think that, and I make this point all the time. There's nobody who's going to put more time and more effort into improving Michigan football than Jim Harbaugh. So, anybody who talks Harbaugh hot seat, uh, tell me who's going to come in and do a better job. And then if you look at it, Jim Harbaugh, let's just say, for instance, entertain that fact, Jim Harbaugh doesn't get it done at Michigan. Who's going to want to follow that? Jim Harbaugh couldn't get done at Michigan. What makes you think this guy is going to get it done? That was Jim Harbaugh. So I think people really need to check themselves when they start getting that Harbaugh hot seat. I know I'm kind of going a different direction with it, but Brian Laguerre, tell me how to pronounce that, Brian. I always butcher it. Zach Charbonnet is the best running back recruit Michigan has had since rankings came out. Is he? Is he better? Sam McGuffey. I think Sam McGuffey was rated pretty high. What's his name? Grady from Grand Rapids. Kelvin Grady? Or Kevin? Was it Kelvin or Kevin? I always think it is. Yeah, Kevin Grady. I think he was ranked pretty high too. But yeah, Zach Charbonnet is definitely ranked among the highest. I can say that for sure. Mr. Johnson says Omari Samuels has the best footwork cuts out of all the backs. Omari's got great footwork. Greg Ryan says folks want to see us score 60 points and put up 600 yards every game. Kids are playing meaningful downs and meaningful games and will be prepared for big games. Be patient with the process. Greg Ryan, that sounds like a guy who's watched a lot of college football and knows how this works. So I completely agree with you on that. People are way too concerned with the stats and way too concerned with aesthetics and things like that. What it looks like now isn't what it's going to look like later. You have to keep in mind, they all have a forward vision. What is this going to look like down the line? That's what they're working for. They're winning games right now. I mean, I don't think there's any reason to complain. I mean, Michigan's offense showed some life against that. I don't know what else Michigan's offense could have done. I mean, other than the fact that there's 20 points and, through 3 games, there's 23 penalties, 21 of them on the defense. The defense has had some lapses. There's only been 2 50-yard touchdowns. Those are the Arizona 50-yard plays. Not Arizona, but Air Force last year. One of you guys in here pointed that out to me. And then, obviously, Saturday, James Prochet, that 50-yard touchdown reception. But, I mean, other than that, I don't feel like there's a lot that you can nitpick. If you want to go back to the Notre Dame game and nitpick from there, but that was 3 weeks ago. So, I mean, what do you see out of Michigan right now? And, yeah, it's fair to say, well, we want to see it against a quality opponent. Well, Nebraska's a conference opponent. It's a home game, Big Ten opener. Again, going back to my point of how important this game is for Michigan. So I don't want to, I don't want to repeat myself and keep circling back to the same point, but I mean, I feel like there's a few, core things that we can really emphasize when we talk about what this game means Saturday and how Michigan is played through 3 games. If I'm a Michigan fan, I'm satisfied they're 2-1. I mean, if you didn't think, regardless, I know a lot of people were, some people have predicted a blowout. A lot of people were very confident Michigan was going to go to Notre Dame and win. I didn't see it happening. They're 2-1. Michigan's done everything that I thought when I was thinking of season predictions and everything. Michigan is exactly where it would be at after 3 games. And Shea Patterson's actually impressed me a little bit. If you would have told me that he'd be completing 70.8% of his passes and had this, marvelous thing going on with DPJ, I would have been like, no way, 14 of 15 and 4 touchdowns, 3 in one game. I'd have a hard time believing that. So if you just look at some of the stuff that Shea Patterson's, and only 2 interceptions, and both of them were because he was trying to make a play. It wasn't a bad throw. I mean, yeah, it got intercepted, so okay, it was a bad, but it's not like it was a throw as soon as he threw it and you're like, oh, that's a pick. It wasn't one of those. It was he's fit balls in that tight of a window already. The nature of it, is it a risky pass? Yeah, probably. But was it a bad pass? No. Are those 2 bad interceptions? I don't think so. So if you want to, I understand a lot of people are focusing and trying to bring up, everything negative that they can about Michigan football. But if you look at some of these things, especially with the offense, and, I mean, the offensive line, it's really easy to, okay, well, let's talk about how the offensive line has. That's really easy. Look at the stuff that Michigan has done. And I think with Shea Patterson leading the way, this offense, there is some life to this offense. I'm a believer in Shea. I'm almost all the way there, but I'm pretty much a believer in him right now. Patterson had yet to reach his full potential. That's back. And speaking of, saw a Jaguar scout in the building yesterday. I don't know who he was there to see, but they were there at Schembechler Hall. Back to some of these comments. Sorry, guys, I'm going on tangents, kind of talking a lot here. Alan Pinkney says, I think Michigan beats Michigan State, Penn State, and Wisconsin. Jimmy G says, Adam, shouldn't the O-line's development be way ahead of where it is, given that they go against that D-line every weekday? I mean, you would think so if you look at it from that aspect. But, I mean, this offensive line wasn't a strength anyway. I mean, let's face it. Last year, not very good. The right side, we talked about the right side of the offensive line all the time. This year, and look at, I mean, just in the past 2 years, what has the offensive line lost? Well, Mason Cole, for one, he was a 4-year starter. Year before that was Kyle Kalis and Eric Magnuson. They held down the right side. I mean, this offensive line, Graham Glasgow at center a few years before that. I mean, this offensive line has been in a rebuild mode. It doesn't have the depth that the D line does. I mean, we've seen Willie Henry, Chris Wormley, all those guys, Taco Charlton from the D line, but Michigan is deep enough. It's not recruiting enough. I don't know if it's not recruiting enough depth or if it's not developing. I don't know what's going on. But again, I point back to this. How many different offensive coaches have been at Michigan? And then, okay, well, who's handling the defense? With the exception of a couple changes, it's Don Brown and Greg Madison. Nobody else. It's those two guys. Don Brown, defensive coordinator, Greg Madison with that defensive line. So if Michigan can find the same people to stay there and focus, and they don't have to, it's not Greg Fry one year and Tim Drevno the next year, and they're learning all these concepts, and it was way easier with Greg Fry than it was with Tim Drevno, and then Ed Warner coming in, and things are simplified now too. And okay, well, if it keeps getting easier, then why isn't it showing on the field? That's kind of one of my questions. We keep hearing this every year that they say, oh, well, it's simplified, it's simplified, it's simplified. Well, where's the production? So, and I understand. And I just said don't focus on the offensive line. I just gave you a million reasons too. So anyway, back to the comments. Sorry. Greg Ryan says I need Turner to get healthy. Christian Turner, yeah, and Christian will be a true Wilson. And after Karan and Chris, it's true Omari Samuels, and then Christian Turner. And Christian Turner had a really good camp. A lot of people were talking about him. Cameron Clark says, do I think Eric Gray decommits? I don't know, Cameron. Bruce McGraw says, why does Michigan have the more difficult schedule? Ohio State's schedule seems set up for them to average no more than 1 to 2 losses per season. Michigan's got a really tough schedule. I wrote about it earlier in the year. On paper at that time, it looked like Michigan should have the number 1 strength of schedule. Regardless of, what happens, Michigan still has a really difficult schedule. And if you look at, the top of a close loss to a top 10 team on the road at night, Notre Dame. Matt the Destroyer 2 says, hey, Adam, do you have an estimate of when Tariq Black will come back? And if so, will he take our offense to the next level? It's got to be long term, right? Because he had surgery on his feet. I'm thinking 8 weeks, but does that, factor in recovery time and all that? I don't know. They have not given a definitive timetable. I think if we see Tariq Black come back, I think that we see him maybe later in the year. But then again, they could probably explore, a medical redshirt year for him. Which would probably be, well, no, now with the new rules, you play up to 4 games now. So anyway, either way, if we see Tariq Black, it's not going to be until late in the season. Ohio State or bowl game. That's my best guess. But as far as, no, Michigan hasn't said anything or put out any definitive timetable. Greg Ryan says he's sold on Shea. Cam Clark says he doesn't like Dylan. Greg Ryan says, I'm sold on Shea. The first touchdown to DPJ was awesome. Nico was open, but he forced it to DPJ just to get him in the game. And Jim Harbaugh really liked that throw, too. That was the throw that he thought really just showed off Shea's vision. I've written about Shea's vision and his efficiency. 2 different things. They go together in ways, but his vision, just the way that he's seeing the field, he saw that to DPJ. Harbaugh described that play. Everything, it was designed for Nico. Jason Hughes says they do feed the media a lot of crap. A lot of the time, O-line is still medial. Matt the Destroyer 2 says did Tariq medical redshirt last year? Yes. Greg Ryan says I do too at camera. The future is bright with Dylan and even brighter with Milton. I like Dylan McCaffrey. Why you guys? Everybody in here liked Dylan McCaffrey a few weeks ago. What's up with the anti-Dylan? David MCC says, what about Chris Evans' pass blocking? Total whiff. Trill City says, I don't see a back better than True. And Trill City, I think we can 100% confirm that True Wilson was named after No Limit TRU because his mom favorited that tweet. And I think his dad did too. So they both favorited my tweet about that and how it was there a possible Master P No Limit influence. So I think that we have our answer, and they named him True. Jason Hughes says he loves Dylan. There it is. Show Dylan some love. Oh, Cameron Clark says you missed my comment where I said I love him. Oh, well, I thought you said. Oh, okay, my bad. Someone said they hate Dylan. I'm like, why are they? What's this anti-Dylan? Big Bubble Blue says Dylan just fits the offensive style better. I mean, I don't know. Shea Patterson looks like he fits the offensive style pretty well. 70.8% completion percentage, 6 touchdown passes through 3 games. What did Michigan have last year? Like 9 total? Who's the best out of the running backs? Karan Higdon. Kurt Kramer wants to know, any news on BP? Nope, nothing new. I haven't heard anything new. Cam Clark says he no longer looks skinny. With Dylan, yeah, I've seen Dylan. Dylan's put on some weight. I mean, he's a long, lanky guy. That's how he's built. Zach Gentry was kind of lanky too. I mean, a little bit different body type. Zach Gentry's gotten huge. So, I mean, you know, that weight program, nutritionist, everything they have, Coach Ben Herbert, they're eating well there. They're going to gain some weight. Benjamin says, do you think we'll see the read option more often? What do you mean see? From the offense or against Michigan? Cam Clark, yeah, Dylan is definitely number 2 right now. True City says no limit Master P. Yeah, definitely for True Wilson. Ballgame 41. Everyone always wants to back up. I know Ballgame. I mean, I had to fend off everybody last year when they thought there was a real race between Brandon Peters and Wilton Spate. That was never the case. It was always Wilton's job. And oh God, talked about that probably more than I think I've ever talked about any topic ever. Sports related. Oh, Big Bubble Blue says Shea will have to prove through Big Ten play. Dylan came in that Notre Dame game looking better than I thought. Well, I mean, Shea looked decent in that Notre Dame game too. But I mean, the circumstances for Dylan were a little bit different. Other than the cramping, I mean, I don't know. Are the tides shifting now from Shea the Savior to Dylan? Because I really don't know, and I'm telling you, there's no reason for that. Shea Patterson has been money for Michigan. Why would you want to change the quarterback right now? Yeah, he's got to prove himself in Big Ten games too, but what's Dylan McCaffrey's body of work? I mean, really. I'm not knocking Dylan McCaffrey. I'm saying, what is his body of work? You want to throw Dylan McCaffrey in there to play against Nebraska? When you got a quarterback who's already led you to 2 wins in 3 games, completing 70.8% of his passes, I don't see that happening. Our words 616 says, what's up with the lack of middle penetration on the D? No Mo Hurst. Simple answer. But yeah, we're not seeing a lot of push from the 3 tech or the tackle. Carlo Kemp, Brian Monet. Not seeing a ton of push there from the middle. I agree. Dwum 4. Bruce McGraw says, if Michigan dominates the rest of the teams up to Ohio State, you see us beating them this year. I mean, that's like, I mean, Bruce, do I see myself picking the winning lottery numbers and being rich beyond belief? I mean, I don't know, man. That's a hard question to answer. I mean, okay, if Michigan dominates, okay, if they're dominant for the rest of the season and just, you know, are spanking everybody every week, then okay, then yeah. But I mean, it's kind of like, that's a really far reach, man. Cam Clark says, this is Shea's job. He's not in, yeah, no, Shea Patterson's job is not in jeopardy at all. Why? Where is this discussion going? Oh my God. Cody Boyle says Dylan for president 2020. Let Shea play. We're just looking to the future. All right, well, Bruce McGraw, who wins the East this year? Ohio State. Kurt Kramer says, I hear you on the cramps. What is up with that? I don't know. It's I talked to some players and parents. I'm not going to name names, but some of the guys were pretty used to playing through cramps, and they weren't knocking anybody. But I mean, it's kind of kind of weird that they had that issue. I don't think we saw that with Notre Dame, the cramping up issue. I mean, I don't know. It's in the past. I can't say why. Shea needs to throw 30 times a game. Okay, and I'll go back. Why, though? Shea needs to complete 17 to 20 passes per game. Put it that way. If he does it in 22 attempts, it doesn't matter, right? Do you want him to go 19 for 33, or do you want him to go 19 for 24? The more attempts, the more likelihood for an interception, right? I don't think Shea Patterson needs to change a thing. They don't need to throw the ball more. They're throwing the ball more. And that's the argument I hear a lot of Michigan fans making. They're throwing the ball more. Why? They're completing the number of passes that you would typically get out of a guy who's throwing 30 to 35 passes per game. If Shea threw 30 attempts per game, I mean, I don't know if he's going to complete 26 of them. But, I mean, if he's giving you 17 completions, right? It's slowly but surely. We'll go back through what was he? He was 20 for 30 at Notre Dame, 12 of 17 against Western Michigan, and 14 to 18 against SMU. Okay, so if they throw the ball a few more times, if Shea can give you like 15, 16, 17, 18 completions per game, I think you're in pretty good territory. I don't think he needs to throw the ball more. He's good. You don't need to throw the ball more when you're completing all those passes. Tyler, this is Felichek. Did I say it right? Tyler Felichek says Michigan seems to be hurt by this injury bug lately. Do you think Higdon can go this week? I mean, I haven't heard anything definitive on crime, like I said, other than it was an ankle injury against Western Michigan. I can confirm that. I mean, the guys are banged up, right? I mean, someone's dinged up every week. This is football. It's hard. I wouldn't be worried. I don't think there's an injury situation. RPJ says, he changed it too. RPJ says, Metellus scares me, but I like the kid. Why? I wrote about this too. Josh Metellus, they need a guy like that. Yeah, it might be a penalty. He's got to cool off the ejection thing, but that was questionable as well. That defensive pass interference. Yeah, work on yourself, not getting yourself in bad positions. But if you're not that aggressive, you're not coming up with a 73-yard pick six right before halftime and giving your team a two-score lead before it gives the ball back to SMU instead of a one-score lead and SMU feeling pretty good about itself. So that was a huge play. That was one of the biggest plays of the season for Michigan so far, 3 games. Benjamin wants to know, hold on. John Provost says, do you think it's pretty close between who starts between Metellus and Hawkins? Metellus had the pick 6, but outside of that hasn't impressed. Liked him better at the Viper, but obviously that spot, continue. Yeah, it's Khaleke Hudson's. I like Metellus and Hawkins, but I like Metellus as a starter. I think he's earned it. I don't think until big time play will say a little bit, but right now I'd still go Metellus. I like Brad Hawkins a lot, though. Brad Hawkins really made a lot of leaps and bounds. Don Brown was saying in camp. So, Bruce McGraw, do you think we hire an offensive coordinator next year? Well, instead of hiring one, and I go back to this point, guys, I made a million times too. Instead of hiring an offensive coordinator, keep the offensive guys that you have, and who cares what they're called? As long as it's the same people doing the same thing, working for the same, the same design for the same product. I'm not going to use a food analogy anymore. Same design for the same product, then you're going to get the results I think that you want. Stop switching everybody every year. It shouldn't be a revolving door. And, with a guy, run game coordinator, emphasizing on the tackles. The simplify it, make it, a 2-guy thing, or one, whatever it is, but just keep the same people there. I think that's more of the answer rather than, do they need to slap a tag on somebody? No, I don't think they need to slap a tag on somebody. I just think that they need the same people there. Cam Clark says Gentry had a nice game last week. He did. Career high, 4 catches for 95 yards. And Gentry is another guy. I mentioned the press conference. I misspoke myself when I was asking Harbaugh the question. I said 11-17 to Gentry. It's actually 7-11. So my fault there. Yeah, 7-11 to Gentry. Patterson Gentry thing. I wrote about that, guys. Again, let me I'll put the link here. This first link is what I wrote today about no rah-rah from Jim Harbaugh during Nebraska week. And the second link is going to be the Shea Patterson efficiency, which I highlight DPJ and Zach Gentry. And do a last call on Twitter, guys. If you're watching and you're not in the live chat, or right, you want to use Twitter at AdamBiggers81, and then again follow Great Lakes Divide at GL Divide. That's on Twitter and Facebook. So we're going on 46 minutes. This one's a long one, but it seems short. Dude loves Skippy questions. I try to read them all, but if it's just like a little comment or something like this guy sucks or whatever, it's like, yeah, I mean the secondary suspect. I need more than that, Alan. I'll read the questions. I mean, you guys are commenting to each other too, but the secondary suspect will give me something more to talk about. Be more specific with it. Joel Brown asks, see this one, Joel Brown says, do you believe this defense is in deep doo-doo when they face a power back? No, I don't think so. A good question, and I gave you some like lame answer. I'm sorry. No. Trail City says he likes Kelly Powell, Jordan Glasgow. Eric Gross, how do you say it? Did I say it right? Eric Gross says, why are people clamoring for Dylan McCaffrey? I'm confused. I know, my head's swimming right now. I'm like, what is going on? Joe Provo says, where's Eubanks been this season? He looked like a breakout candidate before getting hurt. I know tight end's super deep right now. Yeah, I haven't seen a lot of Nick Eubanks. That's a great point. Cameron Clark says we could beat Rutgers. Yeah, I think they... Trail City says, thoughts on the rivalry podcast. What rivalry podcast? Alan Pinkney says, going back to the 2 ejection with Hudson and Metellus, is it really depth behind those 2? Well, I mean, Jordan Glasgow, I think that Kelly Powell would be one of those guys. I mean, Brad Hawkins would be one of those guys. They probably have the ability to switch Brandon Watson. I think they have enough in the secondary. Miles Sims has played a little bit. I'm not saying that Miles would be in there right now, but I mean, with Jalen Kelly Powell, Brad Hawkins, Brandon Watson, I mean, those are 3 guys right there that off the top of my head that I could think of. Brandon Riley says, I feel like the defense needs to create more turnovers. I wonder where we rank in that category. Cameron Clark says we all like Shea. All right. I don't know where they rank in the turnover category. I can look that up. I'll include that more in the Friday preview podcast. Cam Clark says, reiterating, everyone's just looking to the future with DMC. Joe Provost, who fills in for Hudson first half this weekend? Gil? No, Jordan Glasgow. It'll be Jordan Glasgow, as far as I know. Bruce McGraw, any possibility Shea stays another year? Yeah, I think so. Baseball, I asked him at the beginning of the year, people were worrying, okay, we got drafted. He's going to be 1 year at Michigan. He's going to pursue a baseball career. He is not interested in a baseball career. He's focused on Michigan football. I could see Shea being here for 2 years. He didn't come across as he wants to be a one-and-done guy. And I wrote that. It was like one of the first pieces actually on Great Lakes Divide from camp. It's not no, I don't think Shea is going to be a one-and-done guy. I do think, and that's another thing too. I mean, Michigan's only had 1 quarterback. Okay, Rudock was a 1-year guy, right? And then Spate was supposed to be a 2-year guy, and then he got hurt, and then had to go to John O'Corn and use Brandon Peters a little bit. Continuity on the offensive play calling, offensive coaching staff, and having the same quarterback for more than 1 year might also help things. So you got to take in, it's real easy, I think, to criticize the players and everything. Criticize the coaching, criticize the structure of it. I mean, it'd be like a business, well, it's keeping all the same employees, but management keeps changing and then policies keep changing. And okay, you do this now and you don't do that. I mean, that's got to be confusing. So I think at the root, Michigan's causing its own problem. If you look at what's going on offensively and, the lack of what's going on offensively, and, we talk about the offensive line and everything. I think the root of the issue has to be, it's not that the players are bad and it's not that they have bad coaching. It's keep the same coaches. And again, we haven't seen a Michigan quarterback under Harbaugh for more than 1 year. There are things that you can look at. I mean, it's really easy to pick on and say, well, this is wrong. But I mean, I feel like there's some simple answers to those, simple counters to those. Rivalry Podcast is Beanie Wells and Braylon Edwards show. Oh, I like Braylon and I interviewed him. He was cool enough to do a one-on-one with me at Big Ten Media Days in 2016. And I'm not even a Michigan fan. So, but I'm not a fan of former guys, and then just like crapping on. I mean, it wasn't even constructive criticism. I thought that was really childish. I lost respect for Braylon Edwards on that. I really did. I think that was a cheap shot. Absolutely a cheap shot. Alan Pitney says, can Michigan start out 6-1 if they pick up this mess like penalties? Yeah, absolutely. Yep, I think they could start. I think I have them. Since you bring that up, these are my season predictions, guys. I'm with the score. All right, starting with week 1, I had 20 or 21-17 Notre Dame. It was 24-17. Week 2, Western Michigan, I had Michigan 42-13. It was 49-3. Week 3, I had 48-7 Michigan. It was 45-20. Week 4 against Nebraska, I have 23-14 Michigan, putting them at 3-1. Week 5, I have 28-17 Michigan at 4-1. Week 6, that's homecoming against Maryland. I have Michigan 35-10, 5-1. Week 7 versus Wisconsin, I have Michigan 28-24, 6-1. Week 8, October 20th at Michigan State, I have it 23-20 Michigan State. And that was in the very beginning. I'm not going to go back and fill them in. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong. But yeah, I see Michigan, at the very least, I see Michigan at 6-1. If things get cleaned up at 6-1 when it's time to play Michigan State. And I had seen that. I didn't think they were going to start having any issues. Penn State, and then Ohio State. Those are games to look out for, other than Notre Dame. I mean, Wisconsin's going to be a big game. But maybe there's a little bit more reason to question Wisconsin. Now in the beginning of the season, Wisconsin was a pick as a contender in the Big Ten. So, and again, we haven't even seen Big Ten play. It's been the first 3 weeks. I don't like to overreact to things, but Trill said he says he thinks Braylon made some money bets and lost huge. I mean, I don't know about that, but I can say, and he works for Big Ten Network. I mean, Braylon Edwards isn't a guy with a blog who does a live stream from a spare room like I do. Braylon Edwards is a former Michigan great, played in the NFL, works for the Big Ten Network. And I mean, I'm not out here just spouting off anything, but you have to have a level of responsibility. And, I keep it casual, and sometimes I'll slip and maybe, say a swear word or something. But I mean, just come out and say, this guy sucks. This team is ass, or what, I forgot exactly what he said. I mean, it's like, dude, you're Braylon Edwards. I'm not saying, yeah, maybe he is held at a different standard, but I just thought it was unprofessional. I thought it was childish. Forget all that. I mean, he's an adult, right? We crap on, I do, grown men who go on Twitter and, send these malicious tweets to these college athletes. And I'm like, man, what is wrong with your life? Because you need some help. If you get your jollies by, telling a college football player that he sucks, and, go like a couple of years ago with O'Neal, the punter, Shane O'Neal at Michigan, I felt really bad for him. He was getting death threats. Or Blake O'Neal, rather. All right, guys, we're going to wrap it up. Any final? This was a really good one. We're on 55 minutes. And I'm not trying to skip comments or anything, guys. I get into, here's one, Nan, 20 says chance of Mayfield or James Hudson starting this season. And I get this one a lot. I mean, again, this had to be a massive slide of Runyon and Juwan Bushell-Beatty. I mean, those guys are the starters. Of course, I mean, obviously, unless they make massive leaps themselves, and no. I mean, then yes, then they'll start. But Michigan's going to play its best two. Right now, it thinks that Bushell-Beatty and John Runyon Jr. are its best two. And until that changes, then no, I don't see. But Mayfield and Hudson have played, and I do see them getting playing time. Come on, Biggs. Joel Brown says, I'm still saving you a seat on the Michigan bandwagon. It's okay. One more comment, guys. Cameron Clark, how about those Lions? The who? The Lions? Bruce McGraw says, thanks, Adam. First time here. When do you have these? Wait, Bruce. I'll tweet out when I can. I'll have one after a Monday availability. I usually have one Friday between 11 and noon Eastern time, depending on what time of the game on Saturday. Sometimes I'll have one at night or I'll have one Sunday morning. So follow me on Twitter at AdamBiggers81 for the latest update. I try to give plenty of notice today. I just did one kind of impromptu because I wasn't able to make it to player availability, which is actually going on right now. So, but I'll be down there tomorrow for coordinators at noon. So no new YouTube videos tonight. I apologize, but I'll make it up with the coordinator videos tomorrow. Cameron Clark says he wants the Lions to lose so he could get Bosa #1. He's the only Buckeye I want. All right, on that note, guys, I'm going to end it. Again, thanks for watching. Follow me on Twitter at AdamBiggers81. We'll have podcasts this week with my partner, Ryan Schuling, so check those out at greatlakesdivide.squarespace.com. Follow us on Twitter at GLDivide and Facebook at GLDivide, same handle. And I want to thank FederalWilliams.com, our title sponsor. Again, for all your realty needs in the Lansing area and statewide, he's your statewide go-to as well. Contact Mike Williams of Federal Williams. Let them know that Adam Biggers and Ryan Schuling of Great Lakes Divide sent you. And thanks to everybody who watched this. Again, I tried to get to all your questions. If I didn't, Trill City says, Adam, are you a fan of any football team? Yes, I am. Tyler says, thanks, Adam. Hey, guys, thanks for watching. What do I think of the Dodgers? I like the Dodgers. If you guys want to talk, we can talk about baseball another time. We're going on an hour. I have some things I want to do. But again, thanks for watching. Again, follow me on Twitter at AdamBiggers81, Great Lakes Divide at GLDivide.squarespace.com. And watch out for the podcast, live streams, written content. And I dropped a couple links earlier, but look out for my most recent stuff. That's Shea Patterson's efficiency and favorite targets. And then about how Jim Harbaugh wasn't rah-rah. He's not rah-rah during the Nebraska week. I asked him about the 86 Fiesta Bowl. He scored 2 big touchdowns in that game that helped Michigan win 27-23. It was Bo versus Tom Osborne. He doesn't want to talk about it. The only thing that he is even considering talking about is preparing for Nebraska Saturday. So Jim Harbaugh's mind is 100% focused on the game. So thanks for watching, guys. I'll try to do maybe another one tomorrow, but if not tomorrow, definitely Friday at sometime between 11 and noon. So if you have any questions, comments, or concerns, don't be afraid to tweet them at me. I'll talk to you guys next time. Have a good night.